The Battle of Rafa, also known as the Action of Rafah, fought on 9 January 1917, was the third and final battle to complete the recapture of the Sinai Peninsula by British forces during the Sinai and Palestine Campaign of the First World War. The Desert Column of the Egyptian Expeditionary Force attacked an entrenched Ottoman Army garrison at Magruntein to the south of Rafah, close to the frontier between the Sultanate of Egypt and the Ottoman Empire, to the north and east of Sheikh Zowaiid. The attack marked the beginning of fighting in the Ottoman territory of Palestine. After the British Empire victories at the Battle of Romani in August 1916 and the Battle of Magdaba in December, the Ottoman army had been forced back to the southern edge of Palestine as the EEF pushed eastwards, supported by extended lines of communication. This advance depended on the construction of a railway and water pipeline, with the railway reaching El Arish on 4 January 1917. An attack on Rafah by the newly formed Desert Column became possible. During the day-long assault, the Ottoman garrison defended Magruntain's series of fortified redoubts and trenches on rising ground surrounded by flat grassland. They were eventually encircled by Australian light horsemen, New Zealand mounted riflemen, mounted yeomanry, cameleers and armoured cars. In the late afternoon, the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade captured the central redoubt and the remaining defences were occupied shortly afterwards. Background: following their victory at the Battle of Romani on 4 August 1916, the Anzac Mounted Division with the 5th Mounted Brigade attached and infantry in support, went on to the offensive. Their advance depended on the construction of a railway and water pipeline, with the railhead about 40 miles away. On 23 December 1916, the Anzac Mounted Division, less the 2nd Light Horse Brigade but with the Imperial Camel Corps Brigade attached, occupied El Arish during day-long fighting at the Battle of Magdaba. Meanwhile, the 52nd Division, having marched from Romani, established a garrison at El Arish and began to fortify the town on the Mediterranean Sea, 30 miles from the railhead. El Arish was 90 miles by road from the nearest British base at Kantara on the Suez Canal, initially making resupply difficult. The arrival of the Royal Navy on the 22nd of December, quickly followed by the first stores on the 24th of December, meant that during the next fortnight the important Egyptian Expeditionary Force forward base grew quickly as 1,500 tons of supplies arrived by ship. Supplies of all kinds were unloaded by the Egyptian Labour Corps and distributed by the Egyptian Camel Transport Corps. Vitally important, the supply activities at El Arish were protected by the infantry garrison and ground-based artillery, supported by the Navy. On 4 January 1917 the first construction train arrived at El Arish, but it was some time before the railway, with its vast capacity to support the development of infrastructure and the supply of large garrisons, was fully developed. General Sir Archibald Murray, the commander of the EEF, was keen to complete the advance across the north of the Sinai, to put pressure on the southern Ottoman army. Believing an attack would compel Ottoman forces to abandon their desert bases and outposts on the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula, he ordered an advance from El Arish to Rafah, a distance of 27 miles, to begin as soon as possible. Prelude: on 28 December, Major General Harry Chauvel, commander of the Anzac Mounted Division, ordered the 1st Light Horse Brigade to reconnoitre Bir el Burj, 12 miles along the road from El Arish towards Rafah. The road was found to be suitable for cars and artillery, and a further reconnaissance by the same brigade 2 days later to Sheikh Zowaiid, 20 miles from El Arish, reported rolling stretches of pasture, crops and poppies. A small advance guard moved 10 miles further, to within sight of the main Ottoman defences at Magruntein, reporting great activity in the area. The weather cleared on 5 January, allowing a patrol from No. 1 Squadron, Australian Flying Corps, to observe 2,000 to 3,000 Ottoman soldiers digging defences south of Rafah in the area of El Magruntein. 2 days later, British air patrols found Ottoman garrisons in strength at El Qasima and Hafir El Aya in central northern Sinai, which could threaten the right flank of the advancing EEF or reinforce Rafah. While the British air patrols were absent on the 7th of January, German airmen took advantage of the growing concentration of EEF formations and supply dumps, bombing Arish during the morning and evening. The next day the patrols from No. 1 Squadron AFC were in the air all day, covering preparations for the attack on Rafah. Lieutenant General Philip Chetwood, commanding the Desert Column, rode out of Arish at 1600 on the 8th of January towards Rafah, where a 2,000-strong Ottoman garrison was based. Chetwood's mounted force was the same as that Chauvel had commanded during the Battle of Magdaba in December, with the addition of the 5th Mounted Brigade and the 7th Light Car Patrol, consisting of 4 gun cars and 3 stores cars, risking an aerial attack during daylight hours. The force began the 30-mile journey before sunset to ensure there was enough time for the force to reach El Magruntein. For the first few miles they trekked over heavy sand dunes, which were difficult to negotiate for the double teams of horses pulling the guns and ammunition wagons. Once the great shallow trough, worn down by traffic since ancient times, along the old road or Pilgrim's Way appeared, the guns and ammunition wagons traveled on the firm middle way while the mounted units rode on either side. The vanguard of the column reached Sheikh Zowaiid at about 2200. The Desert Column bivouacked near the crossroads to the west of the village. Here the first grass the horses had seen since leaving Australia was found on the edge of the fertile maritime plain, 16 miles north of Arish. The plan for the attack at Rafah the next morning, the 9th of January, was a repetition of Chauvel's successful encirclement attack at Magdaba. The regiments and motor cars would surround the Ottoman garrison position, gallop up under fire, then dismount to attack the defenders in their treble system of trenches and field works around the earthwork redoubts on the knoll. Attack force: the mounted units of the Desert Column involved in the attack under Chetwood's command were Anzac Mounted Division, commanded by Chauvel, composed of the 1st and 3rd Light Horse Brigades, the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade, and the Inverness, Shire, Leicestershire and Somerset Royal Horse Artillery Territorial Batteries, 1st, 2nd and 3rd Battalions, Imperial Camel Corps Brigade with the Hong Kong and Singapore Mountain Battery, 5th Mounted Brigade with B Battery, Honourable Artillery Company, 7th Light Car Patrol consisting of 6 Ford light armoured motor cars equipped with machine guns. No. 1 Squadron AFC, which had been based at Musterbeg during the El Arish and Magdaba operations, moved forward 5 miles west of El Arish to support the attack. Ottoman defenders. Rafah was defended by the Ottoman 31st Infantry Regiment supported by 1 mountain gun battery. It had been reported by British aerial reconnaissance that this force was between 2,000 and 3,000 strong. They were strongly entrenched in 4 main positions on the high ground about Hill 255, known as El Magruntein. The central redoubt, which rose about 200 feet to dominate the surrounding grassland, was supported by 3 systems of redoubts identified by the British Empire forces as A, B and C. These redoubts were linked and supported by trenches on the slopes spreading out to the southeast, south and southwest. The strong, well-prepared and well-sited redoubts and trench systems provided all-round defense with a clear view of a battlefield devoid of cover for some 2,000 yards. The only weakness was to the rear of the position in the northeast.